again, with the passing game, they're going to have to connect down the field. And if there is one, I guess, concern on the NDSU side of things, they have given up explosive plays here or there in the last few games. And
welcome to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kyler Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jamie Williams.
FCS Fans Nation. The GOAT, some call him. We have a special guest for our semifinal preview, and I'm going to start off the introduction of this guest with a question from the Rev. He says, does Sam Herder secretly hate other podcasts? The answer is no, because he's the hardest working guy in the FCS media realm. We are honored and thankful to have Mr. Sam Herder as our special guest tonight for our semifinal preview. Ladies and gentlemen, one more Saturday away from knowing who's going to face up in Frisco, and we have the best insight in the FCS. Jamie Williams, Kyler Neal, and Mr. Sam Herder. Sam, thank you so much for making this what seems to be a tradition, and thanks for hopping on the FCS Fans Nation podcast. How are you after what was looked like a South Dakota field trip there yesterday in the quarterfinals for you?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Like you said, it has become a tradition around this time. Usually Sunday, get back from one of the Dakotas on a quarterfinal trip, and then, get back and record this podcast on a Sunday night. So yeah, this last weekend was fun. Went from Twin Cities to Brookings, and then stayed in Brookings for half the day, and then drove from Brookings to Vermilion to catch the other quarterfinal. So yeah, it was an overall a fun weekend of kind of trekking up and down South Dakota a little bit.
I think I'm stealing your tweet about getting your college football campus tour on. Was that you who said that, or was that a quote tweet?
That was mine.
I think it was Jamie. Yeah,
that was you, Jamie.
And by the way, we sat right by each other too, up in the press box in Vermilion.
Nice.
So
phenomenal.
It's awesome. Did he find his obstructed view? Was he able to find it down there?
I don't know if he tweeted one out. Or not, if he found one. There's a lot. I think there's a decent amount of options in Vermilion. But we were both saying this was our second time at the Dakota Dome, and so maybe the first time around he found that coveted obstructive view in each stadium.
Absolutely. Well, we always tend to see Sam down in Frisco, so we hope folks are already booking tickets and getting ready to go. Whether your team advances or not, you'll find out who might be advancing based off our predictions this evening. A little bit of housekeeping, though, before we kick into the top 6 topics of the week. First off, big shout out to Thumper last week. Jamie and Kyler holding down the fort, bringing on Thumper onto the podcast. Insights, top notch. I loved his CAA take. Just a beautiful, booming voice. And overall, anytime you got the Thumper on there, whether it's little, mid, or big, it's always a good time. So I appreciate him. Next Sunday, we typically have nothing after the semifinal game because traditionally there's a large break in between the semifinal game and the national championship. But because of the shift of scheduling and the 22nd not being so much against Christmas, the Rev is actually going to be hosting a mega live episode. So if you don't subscribe on the YouTube channel, if you're not following the Facebook page, the mega live episode, it's all the podcasters, it's all the network folks. Everyone just jumps on. It's kind of a crapshoot, but it's fun. We'll talk about any topic and kind of recap the semifinal games. And finally, a bracket challenge update. We have first off, of the 33 brackets that have the chance at the $50 grand prize, zero of them, nobody did not pick SDSU versus NDSU. Everybody picked that. So people have been anticipating one of these big matchups for a while. And the top right now, Cody Werlinger is in the lead. Congratulations to him. But it could all shift based off the champions. So enough with the shameless plugs and the housekeeping. Gentlemen, we have 2 games remaining to know who's going to play in Frisco. And that brings us to our top 6 topics of the week.
What are FCS fans talking and posting about nonstop? It's time for the top 6 topics of the week.
Oh, the anticipation is huge. I know. We want to know Montana State, South Dakota, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. But before we get that, let's pump the brakes. Let's go backwards a little bit, gents, because Keith starts us out here and he wants to know, does the chalk of the quarters and semifinals in terms of teams advancing surprise you? What were your takeaways from yesterday's matchups? And of course, we're going to start with you, Mr. Herder. Your takeaways from this last weekend and the amount of chalk that's occurring within the FCS playoffs.
Yeah, if you just look at this year overall, then you look at the bracket, I don't know if we expected much drama before the semifinal round, just with how the seeds shook out. And, the top 8 seeds going chalk into this last round maybe wasn't too much of a surprise, especially with some of the performances we saw in the first round there. And then for all the home teams to win in the quarterfinals, I also don't think was much of a surprise. And for the top 4 seeds to get to the semifinals, I think that was, for the most part, what a lot of people were expecting. You look at North Dakota State's path, South Dakota State's path, especially Montana State's path as well. As the bracket came out, okay, these 3 teams are going to be in the semifinals. The one that had a little, unknowns, the corner of the bracket, was South Dakota UC Davis, where some people looked at that and said, oh yeah, I could see that matchup going either way. And it was, for the most part, a pretty competitive game at the Dakota Dome. So that one had a little bit of who's going to make it out of that corner of the bracket. But for the most part, I just think this year, overall, it does seem like there has been a separation even more with the top 4 teams compared to everyone else. So things rarely go chalk all the way through in the FCS bracket, but looking at this year, it kind of seemed like, all right, it seems like we're probably on pace for all 8 teams to make the quarterfinals, then all top 4 teams to make the semifinals.
I mean, the committee's got to get some props here, because it's not just home field advantage. The fact that it's played out this well is honestly incredible. Kyler, you are in a Christmas mood, a very festive mood. You can tell if you're watching on YouTube right now. Phenomenal background, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Were you feeling festive last weekend watching these games? Did any of this surprise you, that how it played out?
I was not feeling festive just because, my team sucks. So now, I have to put this fake background up to make myself, feel a little overly festive just because my team sucks. The games kind of played out how I thought they would in the grand scheme of things, outside of maybe that UC Davis and South Dakota game. But even that, like Sam said, was fairly close. And that probably, depending on maybe 1 or 2 turnovers, could have went any direction, right? It seemed like both teams were really trying hard not to win that game. Then you look at the other 2, and yeah, I didn't anticipate the North Dakota State game looking the way it did, but at the end of the day, they still won by 20 points, right? It was still not that competitive. Mercer, you could tell that 7 points is pretty much all they were going to do. In the grand scheme of things, yeah, you got to give the community a little bit of credit outside of the CAA love, because that's the only games on this whole bracket that didn't really go chalk. Those were the only ones that kind of had a letdown. Other than that, kind of everything has gone to what you would think. And I do think Sam's right. Maybe in the beginning of the year, we thought this would be a pretty dynamic year where maybe there's a couple different contenders, maybe it's anyone's game. But then about week 8, week 9, we really started going, nope, it wasn't more competitive. Just everyone kind of sucked in the very beginning. And now you're really establishing there's a big gap between 1 through 4 and then everyone else. And I truly still believe that. These are the 4 best teams that have been playing all year. And the cool thing is these are the top 4 teams at the end of this season. So the semifinals are going to be kind of what everyone's hoping for. You always want to see the best versus the best, and that's what we are getting. So I think the committee did a good job seeding for the most part. I still probably would have put Idaho above Incarnate Word in the grand scheme of things. But again, now we're nitpicking, and who cares? Both teams weren't going to make it out of this next round anyway, so it doesn't matter who they were playing. They were still going to get murdered anyway. So yeah, go committee. This kind of was a perfect bracket in the grand scheme of things.
It was a boring but anticipated weekend. I don't know. South Dakota, the UC Davis game, you were there live, Sam. That turned out to be one of the most chaotic, crazy things that anyone's ever seen. What was that? 7 turnovers in that matchup in that game?
Yeah, it was a great atmosphere too. I know that the attendance narrative and talking point has kind of been beaten to death, but what I found is that even if your stadium seats 18,000 and you only get 10,000 people there, those 10,000 fans are probably the ones that are making the most noise anyways. So I was in Brookings for a half, and I thought, that was a great atmosphere. And then in the dome too, the home side was filled out pretty well. and they were into it. They were yelling, they were energetic. And so I thought it was a great atmosphere, and with just so many big plays, whether it be explosive plays or turnovers, just so many swings of momentum. I think that added to it as well. So that was a really fun game to be there because of the crowd. Even though it wasn't sold out, the crowd was still fun. And then just the game flow as well was wild. And so that was the most entertaining game, obviously, of the quarterfinals. The other ones were pretty boring. I just feel maybe it's the law of averages here, because you go back to last year, everyone knew South Dakota State was going to win it all. But that doesn't mean the first, second, quarterfinal, and semifinal rounds didn't have any drama. There's a lot of close games last year. It was like 3 or 4 overtime games last year in the bracket. This year, there hasn't really been a whole lot of drama. I don't want to say it's been a completely boring FCS playoff bracket, but it seems like the excitement we got last year, and then kind of the more boring bracket this year. Maybe things are just averaging out a little bit, but hopefully we get a really good semifinal round. And then once we get to Frisco, we haven't really had a great game in Frisco since the spring, which is honestly one of the more fun Frisco trips I've been to. But hopefully, long story short, hopefully we get a good game in Frisco for the first time in a few years.
Yeah, I think we might be trending that way. And Jamie, before we move into what's coming down the line, I give you one last chance here to speak about what you saw from this last weekend. You're riding high. Your Bills outscored the Lions in a 100-point shootout. I mean, you're feeling as festive as Kyler right now. So what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not completely surprised by the chalk. I had all 8 seeds. I did pick UC Davis last week, but I'm not surprised that South Dakota won. I am surprised that Miles Hastings did his best Torrin Christian impersonation with all the turnovers.
Too soon.
No, it's not. So, yeah, just 2 interceptions in the end zone. I mean, that game could have been completely different. And I know South Dakota turned one down deep too. But a game with 9 turnovers, it was really sloppy both ways. Len Larson, I think he got nicked and just wasn't the same guy. So that's the one that didn't really surprise me. I wasn't surprised by North Dakota State. I mean, I was really kind of getting excited that I was going to be clipping my prediction from last week, because I said 24-7 and they had to go ruin it and score late. But not really surprised by Montana State blowing out Idaho. I think Eck started out coaching himself with the surprise on side and the continuous turnover on downs. It's just he gave a lot of chances away. But I know he knew he had to steal possession. So Montana State just rolled. So, yeah, nothing really shocking. I figured we wouldn't have a whole lot to get excited about as far as a game flow until we got here. And I'm hoping we get 2 really good games this weekend.
Oh, I think it's going to be phenomenal. And just based off the chats, we're in a multitude of group chats, admin chats, podcaster chats. I don't see a lot of agreement. And to go off of Sam Herder last year, we were just like, crown them. SDSU is going to win it all. This is a 2013 Bison. Go. But boy, I think now that we're down to the Final Four, we're going to get a little bit of debate. And, we might as well start that right now. Because Mr. Cody Warlinger, who can predict brackets better than anybody, says it seems like SDSU is peaking and NDSU is skating by because of the opponents they have faced in the playoffs. Could this lead to issues for North Dakota State for the game, says Cody. I just got my 4 tickets for the game, and despite attendance issues, I tell you what, I tried for 4 tickets, my 2 boys, my mom, and I tried for the sidelines for 4, and I failed, and I had to go to the end zone. So it should be quite the atmosphere up there in Fargo. And Jamie, what do you think? Are you taking anything away from the first couple opponents of these playoffs before this matchup? Because the vibe right now is SDSU's on fire and NDSU looks vulnerable. What do you think?
I don't know that NDSU looks vulnerable. NDSU looks exactly like I expected them to look in both of the games. When you play a team like Abilene Christian, they have the ability to get out fast. NDSU adjusted and outscored them 51 to whatever the rest of the way. So it's not like it was a struggle for them. So I don't know that that's the right narrative here. I think they're doing what they need to do to win. South Dakota State looks a lot more dominant right now. I think they're peaking at the right time, especially that defense has really taken the next step. I think, Sam, you and Zach were talking about how they don't have a lot of stars. They don't get a lot of accolades, but how good that they have somebody at each level who's exceptional. They just don't get the accolades. They don't rack up the numbers, but they're going to stop you at all three levels. So I think that's going to get what I'm interested to see. Can NDSU solve that SDSU defense more than what can Mark do? Because, I mean, I'll tell you this, though, if SDSU fans need to take a look back at what they used to say about Cam Miller, because that's what Mark's doing right now. I mean, 6 completions out of 16 or 17. At one point, it might have been the end of the game. I don't know. But, of course, 3 of them went for a touchdown, so it's just enough. But behind that defense, the run game, Mark doesn't have to do as much. I just we'll predict it later. But, yeah, I think both teams are doing what I've expected.
Because in Bison land, it sure feels like the secondary doesn't look great, and the offensive line had a big injury, and it looked a little off last week. It seems like South Dakota State should almost be licking their chops. Is that the case, Kyler, or
no? I mean, again, this is one of those games where they hate each other more than anything. It doesn't matter what happened in the season. These two teams are going to want to beat each other. They're going to get the best of both teams. But also, you have to look at what NDSU just played. And I hate the term just skating by, because they played 2 completely different types of teams in each round, right? ASU, one of the most explosive offenses. Cool, they still beat them by 20 points. Then you had one of the most elite defenses in Mercer, and you still absolutely throttled them. So, right, ACU doesn't have a great defense. Mercer doesn't have a great offense. So you're just playing, in the grand scheme of things, 2 completely opposite teams, and you still did, at the end of the day, whatever you wanted versus them. You still beat them each by 20 points, 22 points average, right? So just skating by, I mean, I guess if you're NDSU and you just had this run of dominance, and maybe you see what Montana State did and South Dakota State just did in the last few weeks, you go, oh yeah, NDSU's struggling. But no, they literally just played 2 completely different teams and had a prep for 2 completely different teams and still beat them both by 20. So in the grand scheme of things, if you're winning any game by 3 touchdowns, I mean, that's typically called, close to a blowout. I mean, they weren't very competitive, maybe for a few drives, ACU in the first half. And then it was, once they got to 20-17, you went, this game isn't going to be close. And then the second half wasn't even remotely close. I think they scored 48-3 or 48-17 was the outcome after that 17-3 start. And then this one, again, Mercer, if you hold them to 7 points and you're North Dakota State, you're going to score more. I mean, they did whatever they wanted. I thought this last game was prime NDSU, to be honest. 31-7. If you had that any other year in the playoffs, we're like, yeah, this NDSU team looks like a nightmare. They looks like they're going to dominate everyone. It just so happens you have South Dakota State, who's really good and matched up really well against Incarnate Word. And then you had, Montana State that I think matched up even better against Idaho. So, yeah, it is what it is. These are the best teams, and it's going to be fun watching them play. But I hate the skating by just because one team's dominating and the other one is still dominating, but just not with a 40-point win, only a 24. Oh, wow. Oh, my God, you suck. You only won by 3 touchdowns. You absolutely suck. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to see what happens. Two teams that absolutely hate each other, that know each other better than anyone else, and they're playing. It's a rivalry game. It's going to be fun.
Hey, you know how Bison land is. A good friend, Tim Howe, tweeted out that the guy behind him after Miller's interception, he said, this is why an asterisk needs to go next to Cam Miller if he wins Walter Payton. And I tweeted back if things aren't perfect for NDSU, the world is burning.
Freaking privileged. I hate you guys.
Privileged fans.
God, I'm just waiting for 4 wins going, hell yeah, baby. And you guys are all pissed off about a 24-point win in the quarters. I hate you.
Basketball season, Kyler. You got it.
State floods.
Sam, I'll give you this question that was just asked by Cody. Feel free to jump in up, but I'm also going to give you the opening for the next question, which is from Jordan Thule. And Jordan says, what does SDSU have to do differently against NDSU to win this time? And what does NDSU have to do to hold back the red-hot SDSU team? So feel free to talk about what seems to be a narrative of these two teams coming in if you want, and then what you think are the big factors for these teams to be victorious this weekend.
Yeah, I think right now South Dakota State is playing better overall right now than North Dakota State is. I don't know if that's necessarily something you can debate, who's playing better right now, because I think it is clearly to the eye test South Dakota State. But the only thing that matters is who plays better in those 60 minutes when they face off this upcoming weekend. And so a lot of the stuff that NDSU is struggling with, maybe they won't struggle with as much just because, just the level of energy and urgency and veracity that they play with, is probably going to be amplified and then some when they play South Dakota State compared to seeing Mercer come to town or seeing Abilene Christian come to town. And they'll get a little extra juice too with the sold out crowd behind them compared to, a sleepy Fargo Dome that was, half full. And so I think NDSU has that going their way, even though South Dakota State right now is looking like they're playing better ball right now. As far as kind of the matchup sort of things, if you're South Dakota State, and I guess this probably goes for both teams, I think they both just need to open things up a lot more in the passing game compared to the first go around when they played, and kind of that rock fight. I think it was 13-9, and it just seemed like it got into kind of the flow of the game where neither offensive coordinator wanted to take a risk. They didn't want to put the ball in harm's way. I think this time around, they're probably going to want to air things out a little bit more. If NDSU can't get the run game going against Mercer, I don't imagine them getting the run game going against South Dakota State. So Cam Miller is going to have to make plays with his arm. He's going to have to convert those 3rd and 6s when no one is getting open. He scrambles outside the pocket and he runs up the field and he dives past the first down pylon. How many times have we seen him make that play to extend big drives? He's going to have to do that again. And South Dakota State, you're going to have to find the way, I think, to establish the run a little bit better last time, which I think they can do a little bit better compared to last time. But again, with the passing game, they're going to have to connect down the field. And if there is one, I guess, concern on the NDSU side of things, they have given up explosive plays here or there in the last few games. And, they got away with it against Abilene Christian. There's that one play where the Mercer wide receiver got behind the safeties for that one touchdown. Didn't really obviously make a difference in a game. But in a game like this, when it's going to be so close, you can't let Griffin Wilde get behind you, because, if it's a game where Mark only needs 6 completions, but let's just say 2 of them go for touchdowns, that could be the difference in the game. So to me, I think it's going to come down to the quarterbacks, because the rushing attacks are both good, so they'll get theirs. I don't think either one's going to get completely shut down where they only muster 75 yards on the ground. Like, they'll get some chunk plays here or there, but ultimately these defenses are too good to allow a 12-play, 90-yard touchdown drive where, 10 of those plays were running plays. I think both quarterbacks are going to have to make plays with their arms to win this one.
Absolutely. I think the defensive, it's a human people aren't really talking about much, but Sam Jung from NDSU, he was kind of the Cole replacement safety that came in. This is a guy who was just a special teamers kind of player, did backup safety junior year. As a senior this year, though, he really stepped up, started making picks, getting a bunch of tackles in games this year. And that was key for NDSU's deep secondary. He'd come down, play linebacker a little bit, bounce back in that safety position. He went out in that 3rd quarter, I believe, against SDSU. And since Sam has been gone, not you, Sam Herder, Sam Jung from the football game, it's basically redshirt freshmen and a sophomore that are back there for the safeties for NDSU. And it has shown the blown coverages, whether you have that USD game, whether you have that deep pass against Abilene Christian, even the Mercer game, they have given stuff up over the top. And that will be something I think is going to be a huge factor if Mark Gronowski is able to go up and over 1 or 2 times. That's all you're going to need to get in a field goal position.
So 3 key guys to touch on here. One is Cam Miller, obviously, but he was obviously dealing with that ankle injury way back when, where the game before he could barely move around against Southern Illinois, I believe. And I think a part of the reason why NDSU didn't open things up a bit more, because they didn't want to put Cam, in harm's way. And when they did open him up more late in the 4th quarter, because they had to, he started to cook. And so on the NDSU side of things, if you want confidence on the NDSU side of things, you go, look what Cam Miller did to South Dakota State's defense when they just let him loose and said, we're not worried about your ankle, just go out there and make plays. On the South Dakota State side, if you want more optimism for South Dakota State, Tucker Large is back, and he's probably the best cover safety in the FCS. And had he played against NDSU, I don't think that game-winning drive would have happened for the Bison, because they found matchups on Tucker Large's backup safety, and that was who Rajah Nelson had the touchdown pass again. So they had another big completion out of the slot. I don't think those get completed against Tucker Large. And another player that didn't play that game was Kirby Voorhees, short yardage back. And how many times did South Dakota State get stuffed on 3rd and long because they try to run Angel Johnson or Amar Johnson up the middle, and that's just not really their style. With Kirby back, I think they're more likely to complete those 3rd and longs. And so those are three players, 2 of them who didn't play, and the one, Cam Miller, who's maybe the best overall offensive player in the FCS, who was playing on half an ankle. So I think those are all 3 major difference makers in this game that are maybe overshadowed a little bit just with either being hurt the last time or just not playing at all the last time these teams matched up.
Absolutely. Huge key factors. And I think a lot of people are thinking South Dakota State. I get the vibe. Some people feel like South Dakota State almost gave it away or really was in a good position to win that game. Kyler, you're kind of giving the head nod. Of course, I want Jamie's input too, but what do you think in South Dakota State needs to do different to win this time up here in Fargo?
Yeah, I think the last game was close, and there was a couple big plays that South Dakota State just didn't capitalize on last time. There's big drop, end zone touchdown. But I think Sam said it perfect, so I don't even want to kind of dive into this. But they need to open up the playbook. The last game was like the most boring but also intense game I think I've ever seen in my life. It reminded me of like you see 2 old people playing chess, but not one of them even want to lose a pawn, right? They're like trying to just keep all of their pawns. They're not even like risking it going, I'm going to let you get this pawn, but my queen's going to just jack you up, right? They were just like playing just the most boring, docile game where, they didn't want to create a lot of risks. The game really didn't matter, it almost seemed like, because at the end of the day, they're like, we're both going to get maybe top 2 seeds, top 3 seeds. We're the 2 of the 3 best teams out there. So maybe there wasn't a lot on the line. I get that sounds stupid to say because it's a rivalry game. You're playing for a home field advantage. But now, like, this is it. The end of the season is here. You have, such a cool story where it's Mark Gronowski trying to get the most wins in FCS history versus you have NDSU trying to establish themselves back at the top and Cam Miller trying to really have that Walter Payton campaign. But yeah, this is just a game where you got to take a little more risk. I'm not saying be Jason Eck out there, but be close enough. Maybe take some of those risks that he did and hopefully you just capitalize because winner goes to the next round, loser goes home. So you have to open up that playbook. You can't afford to just hopefully get your two downs, punt it, and play defense. Someone's going to have to score. So, yeah, I think Sam said it perfect. Yeah, open up the playbook. I mean, that's what both teams really need to do after that first one.
Jamie, your head nod with the playbook comment you almost knocked your camera off the screen. What was that reaction, buddy?
Yeah, I mean that's what it was. They need to stop. They've done the feeling out. They did the feeling out for 3.5 quarters back in the last game. So yeah, I mean, Mark Gronowski is the reigning Walter Payton winner for a reason. He doesn't have quite the weapons as last year. He doesn't have the offensive line as last year, but he's still a talented, smart guy. He's not going to go 7 for 17 again, I wouldn't think. And they've got to let him run that offense because the only real play they had was the Chase Mason play. So they've got to let Mark run that offense. From an NDSU standpoint, if Graham Goering's still out, and I'm not sure his status, I don't know, Sam, if you know, I would be having a safety over the top on Wildy every play. Make somebody else beat me in that pass game because they're gonna they're both teams are gonna start to establish runs. They both have good run games, but the best spark is probably Wildy, and like Matt, like you said, you can't let him get behind. So if you slide a safety over and maybe you have to play straight up one-on-one, play a matchup zone, you got to make somebody else make a play on that receiving core and not let Wildy be the guy to beat you if you're NDSU.
Yeah, it's going to feel like almost the team that goes up 10, if possible. The one who gets up 10, you're going to go, ooh, okay. And I hate to say it as a Bison fan, but to compliment SDSU's defense, especially if SDSU's up 10, then you're like, oh, man, they can pin their big players back and away we go. So, I think we're going to get a lot of crap if we spend too much time on the Dakota schools. We'll get some chance for some additional thoughts in the quick hit questions because we need to get on to the Bobcats, who I don't think this fan base has been feeling the respect enough this year. But I tell you what, behind the scenes, like I said, I like to mention the messaging groups. There's a lot of love for the Bobcats right now. And in terms of this, Jordan Thule and JC both have questions for us. Jordan says, does Montana State need to become a passing team against USD to win? Or do you think their run game is just that much better than USD's top rush defense. Jay adds on a question here to say, are all the USD turnovers in the quarterfinals games indicative of a bigger issue? Is this something Montana State can exploit or just a bad day? Jamie Williams, you are a Bobcat defender. You like what you see. Tell us about this matchup and those questions.
Yeah, as far as do they need to become a passing team? I don't know if they need to become a passing team, but they're probably going to have to pass more. There's a little bit of thinness right now in that running back room. Adam Jones, had a phenomenal game, but what you don't want to see, and Sam and I were chatting about this a little bit Friday during the game, you don't want to see Tommy Mellott busting it up the middle 5 or 6 times in a 8 to 10 play. You got to keep him healthy, and he's been nicked. You got to keep him healthy. I think what Sam said was, I don't even want to see him running in the first half in Frisco. And he's right. You've got to protect Tommy, and he's been throwing the ball. He's having a better passing year than he has in the past when he needs to do it. He's been able to run, and that run he had right now by the end of the first half the other night, that put the nail in Idaho's coffin. What I would say, and I'd say Bob Nielsen's a little bit more conservative than Jason Eck, and he's got to be, because just some of the way that Eck just gave short fields to Montana State, that's not going to get it done. So you can't give Montana State short fields. So if USD is going to turn the ball over like that, they just do like they did at Portland State and just don't play the game and get back on a flight to Vermilion. They're going to have to protect the ball. So I think that Montana State just run your balanced offense. Just be a little bit more balanced in it, and I think Montana State's going to be fine. I'm on record that I still think Montana State's the best team in the country, and they're going to win the title. But we'll see.
Okay, I got to ask this question. Maybe it'll fire things up a little bit. Is because I'm the stats guy, lazy stats guy, and I can look at just what I pulled up on ESPN here in terms of passing yards between these quarterbacks and touchdowns. I mean, 28 touchdowns, 19 touchdowns between Mellott and Bauman. But like the passing yards, Bauman's got the edge there. Their completion percentages don't look too far off. Rushing yards, their top running backs, pretty dang similar. And even receiving yards, USD's got a better receiver in terms of statistics. Is USD do we just think that they just don't have the talent to do this?
There's just more depth for Montana State to me.
Is it possible?
You're looking at the top guys.
Is it possible that we're shocked? Is it possible that we're shocked? Because everyone here thinks Montana State. Kyler, you're pounding for the Bobcats as well. What do you think about this matchup? What do you think about these questions?
I mean, I want the Coyotes to win. Please, Coyotes win. I would love nothing more than to see the Coyotes and Jackrabbits. And, I would love to antagonize people and egg some people on and see what kind of chaos we can have in the stands. But, yeah, I mean, I do think Montana State is just better. I mean, I really do. And I know you're just bringing up those stats. I would love to put the minutes together. I bet you Bauman's played quite a bit more minutes than Tommy Mellott this season. I could be wrong because I know South Dakota has, murder people too. But
that's fair. Yeah, but people would argue the Missouri Valley over the Big Sky. Like they would argue
only the top 3 teams.
I
mean, this year there wasn't really anyone after that was.
But South Dakota looked dang good against NDSU. Pulled off the win. They looked really good against South Dakota State, and a lot of people think that those 2 Dakota schools are going to beat Montana State. I'm just saying there's a lot of factors here I think people are ignoring.
And those 2 schools may, and, South Dakota may too, but I also think people are just, actually giving Montana State a little bit of discredit from the past. This Montana State team looks different from the previous years, maybe even the top tier of the Big Sky. Their defense is elite. They are doing whatever they want on the ground, through the air. Tommy Mellott looks like a much better passer. Like Jamie said, he seems, more methodical in the pocket. He's not rushing things. He's not throwing 50-50 balls. This is an offense that I think is, moving extremely well and not making mistakes. I mean, Tommy Mellott was the most efficient passer, from PPF or PFF? Sam?
Yeah, I was actually pulling that up right now. And so as far as snap counts, Mellott is actually at 788 offensive snap counts, and Bowman is only at 723. He also played one less game with that cancellation. So a lot of people don't love PFF. For the most part, like what I see on PFF as far as the grades team and individual matches up with, what is usually realistic. Some of them you kind of go, okay, how did they get here? But the one value, or not the one value, but one of many values of PFF is, snap counts, and especially like defensive players, like how many snap counts does this guy have on the edge compared to on the interior of the defensive line. So that's why I like PFF, and I pulled it up just to see the total snap counts. But I did want to mention one thing, which is interesting. The number 1 PFF graded quarterback is still Tommy Millott. The number 2 PFF graded quarterback in the FCS is now Aiden Bauman,
Nice.
A little bit ahead of Cam Miller at number 3.
Matt, Cam's a bum. Not that guy.
should definitely not win the Peyton.
Yeah, but
You know what?
Wow.
But
You know what? I agree. I now agree with the fan behind Tim. Put an asterisk.
there you go.
Ridiculous.
But I don't think Montana State necessarily has to throw it. I know South Dakota's defense is elite. Their offense is explosive as well. They have kind of a sneaky offense in the grand scheme where I think like their average play is pretty dang good, passing. But at the end of the day, it's just I think Montana State is so damn good on the ground. They don't have to force any type of passes. I think even if they get down, let's say 7, or let's say they get down 10 points, which I don't see that happening, I just think their momentum, especially in Bozeman, it is just going to be a different animal. And I think they'll be able to outgrind South Dakota towards the end. I mean, I really do think that they are a much more mature team than they were the previous years. And we even look at like last year's Montana State team that wasn't very good, right? And when I say not very good, it's not this good, right? They were still a playoff team, but they took NDSU into overtime, right? They lost to South Dakota State by 3 points. And this Montana State team, I think, beats last year's Montana State team by 21 points. I mean, I really do think that. So if we're looking at, we all think maybe South Dakota State's not as good as they were last year, and I think that's a fair assumption, right? Well, I think the grand scheme, most people would say Montana State's quite a bit better than they were last year. And I know the transitive property doesn't really work that way, but if they were competitive, and most people even thought Montana State probably could have beat South Dakota State, there was a controversial call, right? And that was a South Dakota State team that was so much better than everyone. Well, this Montana State team is so much better than they were last year. They haven't been in a competitive game. I mean, that's the weird thing. At the FCS level, their most competitive game was like a 14-point win. I mean, so they haven't played any competition. I guess they played UC Davis, but they were up by 30 before UC Davis started clawing back. And honestly, I think this is such a BS answer, but I think they took the foot off the gas, and UC Davis fought back. They fought hard. But that game was kind of over at halftime, and I think most of Montana State's brains, and then they just didn't come out the gate, firing. I don't think they're going to think that same way for South Dakota. They seem, especially in Bozeman, a much different team. And, yeah, I don't think South Dakota, even as good as they are, if we all think the top 4 teams are elite, which they are, I just think Montana State is a different level this year. I think we throw away the Montana State. Montana can't play with the top of the Missouri Valley, because we even saw, Montana last year beat up NDSU. I mean, sure, they lost to South Dakota State. I think that was a nightmare playoff matchup style. Styles make for matchups. I just think Montana State has the juices. They have the gas. They have the coach. They have the experience. They have the want. They have the home field advantage. This is going to be a tough ask for South Dakota.
And to answer Jay's question directly in terms of the turnovers and other stuff, there definitely is something to being a team that's coming in hot, on fire, and disciplined. Let's say James Madison into a Fargo Dome 2016. You could see it. You could feel it. And South Dakota against Tarleton, even when they played NDSU, they made a lot of really dumb mistakes. Now you got a lot of turnovers against UC Davis. They're a great team. Lots of credit to them. I just defended them. But I will say there's something to playing your best ball if you're going to go in and beat up the biggest kid on the playground. And then, the passing game sure seems like a lot of you guys are sold with Jordan's question that they could just utilize that run game. Sam, what is your overall breakdown from analyzing these teams and this top-tier Montana State team? What do you got?
Yeah, I think Montana State will have to pass the ball some here. I don't see them totally running away with it on the ground, because USD is pretty stout. I mean, they have a big physical defensive line. Their linebackers are good. Their safeties can come down and thump and play the run really well. So Montana State is going to have to throw the ball some. I mean, kind of similar to UT Martin. UT Martin was pretty physical up the middle, but Montana State threw the ball a decent amount, and they also kind of went off tackle quite a bit as well. Instead of trying to go through UT Martin, they just said, these guys don't really have the speed. We'll try to go around them. So they'll have to throw the ball a decent amount, I think, and Malott has shown that he is capable of doing that. It's not 2021 where he's just throwing fades. He's fitting the ball in some tight windows and has some nice touches on the ball. Whether it's his footwork, mechanics, all that doesn't look the smoothest. Doesn't look like a prototypical NFL quarterback and what they ask you to do, but I do think he's has been a really good passer this year. We'll just have to see how long USD can defend that run, because they might be able to do it for a good chunk of the game. But when it comes down to the fourth quarter, because I do expect it to be a decently close game, and they're down by, let's just say USD is down by 7 points with 7 minutes left, and Montana State has the ball, and they start getting 4-yard carries, 6-yard carries, and they're grinding the clock, and it's 3rd and 2. USD has to get the ball back, get off the field defensively. Can they get that stop? That is the question. So I do think Montana State's offensive line is the best in the FCS. They have an All-American center who's mostly healthy now, just sitting on the sideline because they're rolling so well right now on the offensive line that they don't want to bring him back in and kind of mess with stuff. They have an all-conference left guard or right guard, I can't remember. They have an all-conference guard who's splitting time with an underclassman because the underclassman is that good. They have Marcus Ware, who's probably going to be an NFL draft pick. They have Connor Moore, who right now is getting tampered with $250,000 offers from the P4. I don't know if they'll be able to hold on to him or not, but this is an elite offensive line, and the bar to win a national title is to have at least 2 NFL guys on your offensive line. That's how high the bar is. And Montana State has 2 pros on their offensive line and a few other guys who are maybe not pros, but they're also really, really good. So I just think Montana State's offensive line is that good where they're not going to go crazy in this game and run for 500 yards or 450, but it seems like they just keep on leaning and leaning and leaning. And eventually the dam starts to break for that defense.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if Montana State wins, I'm excited to see who they face off with. Great insight, Sam Herder, because I think a lot of the Dakota fans up here have 2021 laziness, and they're just like, oh, well, we're going to see who wins between us two, and then somebody will play Montana State, and we'll probably beat them. But I remember with Tommy Malott sitting at my table upstairs, and Kyle, I remember sending you this photo. I was like, hey, I went through every single one of Tommy Malott's passes in the playoffs before they played NDSU. Look how many of them were 50-50 balls. And that is not the same thing as now. Remember, Montana State was the 8th seed, if I'm not mistaken, on that year, and they went down to Texas. I think they beat Sam Houston. They beat the 1 seed, right? And they went on a run. And of course, Tommy Malott was injured in that championship. I don't know if it would have made a difference with the NDSU offense and all that, but it's just, this is a different team. And this may be a stupid take. People are like, obviously, Matt, but people really need to understand that this is not a 2021, well, the Dakota team's just going to whoop up on Montana State once they get there.
Yeah, Malott had I think it was the first Martin. He had one of the most beautiful tight throws in the end zone where, I think it was Martin had 3 defenders. I forgot which wide receiver caught it. But this thing was a missile, and it was the tightest window. It was an NFL caliber throw. I agree with Sam. He's probably not the protege NFL caliber quarterback, but he can make some throws that a few years ago, good luck. He was just thrown up to McCutcheon and saying, hey, you're a big dude. Let's see if you can get down with the ball. No, he's making some elite throws that are pretty impressive to watch.
Awesome. Well, you guys are going to get some game predictions for those, and those are me coming down the line, so stick with us. We are going to flip a little bit into national mode for our last 2 questions here in the Big Six, because Sam Herder provides such good clarity when it comes to these big picture questions. And here we go. We're going to get one from Mr. Derek, and he says, this year has really played into the extremely fair narrative that the Montana and Dakota schools are the only ones that have a chance to win championships. Is there any program that you think is close to making the step and being a consistent contender? Okay, I'm going to play my magic wand, and that's what you're going to need for this to actually happen. And the Mountain West has taken both the Dakota schools and the Montana schools. So I don't even want to do the take where you're going to talk about who can step up to beat the others. If those 4 were gone, who has the resources, the power, and everything to become what has just disappeared, which is these Dakotas, which is these Montana schools? Mr. Herder, I'll pull up your preseason top 25 from the Hero Sports poll. But who crosses your mind at all who would have the resources and funding and backing to become that top tier?
I think UC Davis is the first one that comes to mind. I mean, they have the resources behind them, the location. I think they have the head coach as well. They're restricted a little bit academically as far as recruiting, but they can still recruit at a high level. So that's one that comes to mind. Tarleton State comes to mind. They're funding things at a very high level. And they've actually done a really good job retaining their top talent as well. I think they have a pretty healthy NIL collective going at Tarleton. So that's one that comes to mind. USD as well. UND. I think they're funding things well. They have great facilities already up and still going up at UND. I think that is none of us would have pictured USD even 4 years ago or whenever, I think it was 2018 when they were in the playoffs with Streveler. Like none of us pictured, they're going to be a semifinal team in 6 years. Like it just didn't seem likely. It kind of seemed like right now, if you said, is UND going to be a semifinal team in 4 years? It's kind of like, I don't know. They'll probably be a playoff team, but semifinals, that seems like a lot. But again, we were saying the same thing about USD. And I think UND, the new head coach is getting some juice, into that program. And again, facilities are going up. They're funding things well. They draw a pretty decent crowd as well. So I think UND is another one that comes to mind. Not sure about East Coast. Like it's either Maine or Rhode Island who has like massive facilities going up because they got a major donation. I can't remember which one of those, but maybe one of those. I mean, Rhode Island's on a good trajectory, so maybe someone on the East Coast could step up in the absence of those major teams. I mean, if I had a magic wand, I would wave it too and get those 4 top tier teams out, just because I think it'd be good for those 4, and I think the FCS would be more fun without those 4. It'd be weaker, but I think it'd be more fun. But it doesn't appear that window will be closing for any of them to get into the Mountain West anytime soon, at least.
Yeah, it definitely makes for the same old story. And Jamie, bouncing off this question a little bit, you obviously have a team that's very successful at the next level. If those 4 teams disappear, you're out there on that East Coast. Do you see anything SoCon, CAA funding wise, or is everything off the table now with Delaware moving on, your Jacksonville State moving out of here? Like anything left on the table? Scraps?
No, there's always going to be good teams. I think Sam hit the main 2 that I came up with right away was UC Davis and Tarleton. I mean, maybe Abilene Christian, because I think Keith Patterson's a better coach than Witten. But, McIver just went into the portal. So who knows? The thing I want to see with UC Davis, is it just the fact that they had those excellent couple of guys, or is that something that they could sustain? So that's going to be really interesting as we move in to the next few years. So, I mean, Idaho's not going anywhere. I know they just lost Eck, and about 5 seconds after that, Dwyer went in the portal. And he's about all they had, but they'll find a way to hire a good coach. I'm not sure where they'll go for that. But
they're getting pummeled. They're getting pummeled in the portal.
Yeah, Jack Lane. Everyone's
Jack Lane.
Did they all go? I haven't
top
paid
2 running backs. Yeah,
everyone's gone.
I assume Jackson Eck will be in there as well. By the way, speaking of Big Sky in New Mexico, Logan Fife just committed to New Mexico State.
Oh, there you go.
That's an interesting one.
Going from one Big Sky school to the other.
Pretty much.
I heard that quiet slight last week, Kyler, that you had. I think it was CA.
So he's going FCS to FCS, pretty much.
FCS to FCS. Yeah. Oh, was Jacksonville State winning their first FCS title in a long time?
Yep, that's what he said last week. Very quietly.
Yeah. So I'm glad Sam said UC Davis. I think if we went back to like our 2019 podcast, there was a question of like, who's the next powerhouse? Who's the next sleeping giant? Maybe that's actually what the question was. And the very first thing, I mean, Matt, you said North Dakota, right? Yep. So Sam already touched on that. North Dakota could definitely be a sleeping giant. My number one was, UC Davis. They have the facilities. They have a beautiful location, and it's a rare time where it's in California and it's a real college town. I think if you pump up the atmosphere, get people excited, I mean, that could be a happening place, and they already recruit extremely well. I get they do have some academic issues that maybe a lot of the FCS outside of the Ivies don't have to truly deal with, right? NDSU can kind of go after who they want. UC Davis really can't. They do have to go after a certain type of athlete. It is education first for sure. Not saying NDSU's isn't, but it is different requirements. So, but they got the money, they got the facilities, they got the area, they got the weather, they got the town. I mean, Davis, California is beautiful. It's not San Luis Obispo, but it's not bad. I think UC Davis is by far a sleeping giant. And then, like we said 2 podcasts ago, it was a similar question. We said Tarleton probably, or that was with Thumpy. It was last week. We said Tarleton probably has the best bet out of anyone who lost last week to kind of make a name for themselves in the next coming years. So, I mean, Sam's just kind of hitting on all the ones. So, yeah, good luck. Just trust Sam. Sam's going to say exactly everything we did too. So, I think those are potentially sleeping giants. But until the Dakotas leave, I mean, good luck. You could be a sleeping giant, and that giant's still going to get toppled down by those top-tier teams. So,
and we have to wait till next year or probably the end of the season podcast to discuss this, but there's a ton of turnover on North Dakota, South Dakota State, and Montana State. It's going to be interesting next year. But
every team has turnover now. I don't care about it anymore.
That's true.
Yeah, every single team is going to get either they're going to graduate and lose a whole bunch of talent, or they're just going to get drained. So every year's different now.
Kyler, I'm glad that you threw that extremely negative thought into the next question.
Always, baby. Always negative.
From the other Kyler, the positive Kyler Elliott. He says, what do you think is the major separator thing that makes FCS football so great? Why do you love FCS football? And Jamie, Kyler, we have time to talk about this all the time. I'm really going to give this floor to Sam Herder because I'm the type of person who freaks out about everything. And Sam is always the clear, hey, I don't think the portal is going to be that bad. I think you guys are overblowing this. There's no reason to freak out. FCS is still great. Oh, JMU's gone. It's not watered down. Sam, you have great clarity when these things come up. This question's built for you to have your moment. So what do you think, Mr. Herder? What makes FCS football so great?
Well, I think you kind of start with the playoff format, which the FBS has now, but you kind of start with that and, declaring a true NCAA Division I football champion. And I think the bracket for how many flaws it has and the top heaviness, like it's still a fun bracket style to determine a national champion. The access is great in the FCS. It's not, super hard to get an AD or even a commissioner or a head coach, on the record or on the podcast or whatever the case may be. I think it's still, for the most part, the most genuine level of college football. This is kind of what we all grew up loving about college football. There's a little bit less of it now in the FCS level because it has turned into an arms race. I think that is why you see a separation and such a top heaviness in the FCS right now. Is a part of it is, some former powers have moved up. I also think a part of it now is, to win a title in 2007, like you just needed to recruit a couple of back-to-back classes, develop them really well, and then bang, as juniors and seniors, you're making a national title run. It's so much more now than that because you need facilities, you need an NIL collective, you need cost of attendance, you need Alston payments, you need 30 to 40 to $50 million facilities. And the reality is, for as much as we would love to say, okay, how do these teams catch the teams at the top? Well, you have to invest. We need teams to care about football. A lot of FCS teams do care about football, but they just don't have the money. I mean, they're searching for $100,000 up there at their locker room, let alone try to get a NIL collective going or, try to put up these facilities to keep up with the Joneses. So I think the FCS landscape is changing, quite a bit, just like college football is changing overall, but it still feels like the more genuine level. And I think a lot of people, like a lot of FCS fans, if they pay attention to the FBS, they're going to pay attention to the Power Four and not the Group of Five. But a lot of the complaints people have about the FCS, you're going to have the same complaints about in the Group of Five. No one goes to playoff games. Guess what? No one goes to the lower tier bowl games. FCS teams can lose money going on playoff runs. You could also lose money going to bowl games. All of our top players are leaving. The Group of Five has it much worse. If you're a Group of Five standout, your chances of getting plucked is much greater than being an FCS standout. It's just
ask Marshall.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. That's not an exact answer of why the FCS is so awesome because it does have its flaws, but overall, I think it's a fun level to cover, fun level to follow, because you can get into the weeds of realignment and the top heaviness overall and the play on the field and all that. But just throughout the course of the season, the drama of who's the 1 seed, who's the 2 seed, who gets the first round bye, who's in, who's out, like it all kind of leads up to the playoffs. And that's why I think that the season overall is fun, because we get to see the race for who's in the bracket and who's not, and the seeds and all of that. Plus, you have it can be a positive and a negative, but you have such a diverse group in the FCS, whether it's full scholarship, partial scholarship, the Ivy League, the HBCUs, which have pound for pound ass passionate fan bases anywhere in all of college football. Like, it's just a really diverse group of teams, football teams, athletic departments, and what exactly they want out of their football program, athletic departments. They all have kind of different varying reasons, whether it's, academics or enrollment or to try to turn a profit, like the Montanas and the Dakotas. So I don't know. It's a very diverse subdivision, and that's what also makes it fun.
And you missed the biggest portion. We can't get Curb Herkstreet on this podcast, but we can get Sam Herder. So at the end of the day, that's why the FCS is better. We can't get Kirk, but we can get Sam. So that's why.
Heck yeah, top tier FCS media goat right there. And nice enough guy to join us down in Frisco and big get-togethers for margaritas, and of course when we have tacos.
Taco King, coming to you from bright and sunny Fargo, North Dakota. It's time for a taco bet, and time for you losers to pay up.
Taco bet time, also prediction time for two of the people on this podcast this evening. Taco bet is from Jordan Thule. Thank you, Jordan, FCS Gold member. He wants over-unders for total scores for both of the games, guys. So here you go. Montana State versus USD. Total score over or under 55 points combined. Mr. Jamie Williams, what do you think? Tacos on the line, dude.
MS, we'll go one at a time?
Yeah, do them both. Over under 55 for Montana State USD, and then over under 35 for NDSU SDSU.
Okay, you want my game prediction with it too, or are you going to do a second section?
Let's do that separate.
Okay. All right. So 55. I mean, gosh, that's a good number.
That's a real good number.
That's actually exactly where the books have it right now.
Oh, really?
They have 55 and a half for USD Montana State. Dang. And then SDSU NDSU is 45 or 47 and a half, excuse me.
Okay.
Wow, yeah, Jordan, well done.
I definitely take the over 35 pretty easily for the Dakota State game. The 55, man, that's tough. I think we probably just slide a little bit over or a little under, but if you're going to make me pick, and I know you will, I'll just take a little under.
I will make you pick. Kyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the MSU USD game is going to go over 55. I don't think it's going to be drastic. I think you have two really good defenses and two really good offense going against each other. It'll be a little bit of a bend don't break, but I think in the fourth quarter there's going to be a few breaks. And then for that NDSU, SDSU under 35, I think it's going to be over. I'm not saying who I think is going to win, but I think it's going to be more along the lines of like a 21-17, so just barely over even that. If it was the 45 line, I'd probably take the under, but even that one makes me a little nervous. So, yeah, I'm going to go over for the Montana State game and then under or over 35 for the Dakota Bowl.
For what will be my predictions, not on this podcast, I'm going to go under for both. So close that both of these teams end up on bad beats. And I already know the scores. I'm predicting them. So bad beats, it'll be all over it based off of my total. But it is just slightly under for both of those lines. Sam, I know you're not predicting tonight because you've got media stuff and things that you have to do. But what do you think for the over-unders of these totals?
I think both will go over, especially the 35 and a half for South Dakota State, North Dakota State. I think that'll go over the actual line of 47 and a half. I don't know if I would touch that one. That's probably right on par, but 55 and a half. They nailed the total points for that one. And so kudos to them. I think over for that one too. South Dakota has given up I think they're super, super talented. The Yotes are defensively, but they have given up a decent amount of points over the last few games. Some of that was just kind of weird game flow, like the UND game. Some of it was just scheme, like Tarleton State. But I think Montana State's offense is good enough to score, into the mid-30s. And I think South Dakota, if there's one way to attack Montana State defensively, because they have been playing super well, is maybe to get some of those explosive plays over the top. And USD has some electric weapons, on the outside. And I also think you have Pierre, we have, Travis Tice as well. I mean, they run super hard. So I think South Dakota I don't know how many long sustained drives they can have on Montana State, but I think USD could pop a couple of explosive plays to get that point total up. And there could be a special teams touchdown as well. Montana State has a great punt returner. USD has a great kick returner. So there could be some hidden points or whatever on special teams to hit that over of the total points.
Very cool. All right. Well, the tacos will be divvied out. Taco King, big bet win this weekend. So we're excited for that. But that being said, for my top two guys here, Jamie and Kyler, here you go. South Dakota, the 4 seed, at Montana State. It's prediction time. Jamie Williams, who you taking? What's your score?
I'm on record that I think Montana State's winning the title, so I'm certainly not gonna go against that. I think we get a game around let's call it 31-20. I think it is tight, but I do have Montana State pulling this out.
By the way, before we get to the next prediction, I do notice your clothing, and I think if I'm not mistaken, that might lead to something. Kyler, Christmas Kyler, South Dakota at Montana State. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm rooting for the Yotes, man. I really hate anyone winning in the Big Sky because I'm a petty loser. But I just think Montana State is built a little bit different this year. I think it's not the Montana State of the last few years. Give me Montana State. I think it's going to be closer to a 38-21, 38-24 type of game.
Very cool. South Dakota State at North Dakota State. Not for a rock. It's for a trip.
Matt, where's your prediction, buddy?
Oh, do you want South Dakota, Montana State? I guess I could give you that one now.
Wait, why aren't you predicting anything? You loser, and you're abandoning our podcast for something else?
Well, I think there's some people on our network that I'm likely to go on a show this weekend or this week for this one. But South Dakota at Montana State, I agree. Everything you guys said, I do. So I will take Montana State winning 30-23. 53 points. 30-23. Nice and close. Fun game. Just under. South Dakota State, North Dakota State. I will hold my prediction here. Jackrabbit Illustrated. Make sure you guys tune in. Kyler Neal, you're up first. Who's going to take it, man?
It's just a bummer that, Jamie, we put in all this work and Matt always just, plays us like second fiddle. He's like, I don't care about this podcast. I get we're always doing our game picks here, but another one's more important. I mean, that's how we are, Jamie. It feels bad.
That's how it feels.
That's how it is.
Literally, we'll see if any of them listen to our podcast. I have not been invited on their pod yet.
Wow, what an egotistical
They haven't reached
guy.
out to me. It's just they've brought me on every time we faced off since the spring season. So we'll see. This would be hilarious if they don't message me. I'll do my own podcast. I'll go live the same time. I'll go live the same time they go live, the B team, if I don't get a text.
Just to put in your score. Yeah, I think this game's quite a bit more intriguing. I think also, and I'm kind of in the minority, I actually think NDSU matches up a little bit better versus Montana State than SDSU does, but I think SDSU matches up better against NDSU. Man, I'm flip-flopping because a couple weeks I'm like, yeah, NDSU wins it all. Now I'm thinking Montana State potentially, I don't know. You know what? I'm just going to go with it because I'm going to play devil's advocate. I want the Yotes. I want the Bunnies to win. So hopefully if I pick the opposite, that will happen. So yeah, we're going to go with NDSU winning in a close battle. I think it will be pretty low scoring, but maybe like a 21-17 NDSU. Whoever has the last ball is going to make a Heisman type of play. It's either going to be Cam Miller or Mark, and they're going to put the team on their back and run it in.
Oh, beautiful. Jamie, what do you got? You're wearing the Jacks and the Bison. Who takes it?
Yeah, I always got to wear something of somebody who wins, but the shirt is because this is the last time I'm going to be able to wear NDSU as a winner this year, because I'm going to go with South Dakota State 28-24. I think we open it up a little bit more than the last time, and I think this time Mark makes the play.
Park makes the play. Well, if those are the final scores, I would be sad or happy in the Dome, but that would be a heck of a matchup. So looking forward to it. The week is going to go by fast. It's going to get here quickly, gents. So let's get into some quick hits.
Just because your question is answered quickly doesn't mean we don't care. It's time for this week's quick hit questions.
All right, gentlemen, time to get into our quick hit questions. Starting us off here, the Rev. Here we go. He says, since this is the first playoffs that have ran chalk with the semifinals, top 4 seeds are making it. Do you see that becoming more the norm, or is this a true outlier that has just happened since 2011? Sam, with the new 16 seeds, what do you see out of here?
I don't think it'll go chalk every time. I don't know. It's hard to know for sure. Obviously, it kind of just depends on the matchups and who's where. But usually there's always one team that kind of sneaks into the top 4 that ends up not being, maybe deserving of that, and they lose in the quarterfinals or something like that. So I don't think it's going to be like this every year. It just kind of seemed like this is the type of season, the type of bracket where things shook out, where top 8 in the quarterfinals, top 4 in the semifinals.
Very cool. Matt Kelly, great question here. For the show, with the big semifinal game between NDSU and SDSU, is the game more important to one program than the other? It just feels like with all the changes in college football, they don't want to look like they're taking a step backwards. I think it is equally important to both, but if you're going to force me to pick, the vibe would be that it's more important to North Dakota State to finally take it back, end a Bunny dynasty, and more importantly, all the Mountain West rumor, right? I mean, if something's going to help your odds to maybe still get that invite over an NIU, you should win the FCS championship and not lose to a team that has looked way better than you the last few years. Seth Meyer says, where do you see Idaho going for their next head coach? Kyler, Jamie, I'd love to toss you guys. I'll toss you the next quick ones, but I'm going to go back to Sam for this. Sam, from Seth Meyer, where do you think Idaho is going to head?
That Idaho is a little bit more difficult. There's some programs where they have a head coach opening and you can go, okay, these guys make sense. I don't know where Idaho goes. I know I'm a big fan of their defensive coordinator, Dan Jackson. I don't know if he's interested in it or if he wants it, considering how many guys are heading into the portal. But I know there's a DB's coach, I want to say at Oregon State. Can't remember his name, but he was on the staff last year or 2 years ago. I've seen his name floated around a little bit. I don't know. I think they should. If I were them, I would hire Tyler Roll, but they're not going to. I think that'd be a good hire for them.
Yeah, there you go. See if that Iowa State money holds up. Barry says, with 3 of the top 5 Heisman vote getters having their start in the FCS, which player in the portal from the FCS this year or last year do you see having a chance of making a Heisman run? First off, I'll be petty. I hope none of them do, because portal sucks, and I hope anyone who goes up doesn't do great. And I'm sorry, I hate to be douchey, but Kyler, what do you think? Is there anybody out there? Jamie, you know the FBS. Does anyone have a name of a guy that could do it?
I think we're still waiting for so many people to hit the portal and see where they land on the teams. And I do think landing on a specific team does get you a different result. So I actually have no names. I mean, I apologize. So yeah, Jamie, there you go, buddy.
The only thing I'll say is let's see if Maverick McIver can get a P4 opportunity. If he can, that might be one. I mean, Oregon has sniped somebody every year. So, hey, let's say Maverick winds up there. I don't know that he will. I don't think he will, but I don't even know who's talked to him. But, yeah, that's the only name that really jumps, but it's a great question. It's a really great question, and it was cool to see some of those guys represented at the Heisman Trophy. Now, Travis Hunter, he was a 5-star guy that Dion convinced to come to Jackson State.
Yeah.
And that because Dion's Dion, and that's fine. I mean, that's where he started. It's FCS. I hate the guys that move around like Cam Ward did, though. I really do hate that. I will always advocate for you can transfer once. That ship has sailed, but that would be more enticing to me.
There you go. Looking to the future, Jamie, is the UAC the next CAA? It seems to me that the UAC is now the 3rd best conference, especially for seeing how competitive they were in the playoffs. Mr. Michael O gives us that question. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think USC has a great chance to be they're going to pass the SoCon, to pass the Southland. I mean, just look at Tarleton and Abilene Christian were both really good. Eastern Kentucky found their way in. Southern Utah, so, I mean, I'm going to jump on their bandwagon. Targhee led the country in rushing this year. So there are programs that are building stuff. And I didn't even say Central Arkansas. They always have talent. I think USC is loaded. And by the way, North Alabama, don't count them out either. They're slowly building a little something there. So yeah, we're looking at a really competitive conference, if nothing else, and they showed it by getting 3 teams in, with the 4th team being one of the last 4.
And they don't have Bryant, so there you go.
Yeah. They don't have
or
Bryant.
NCAA or
That certainly helps their case. This is fun. We'll go around the bend. And Sam, I don't want you to give away prediction stuff, so feel free to pass on it if you want. But which matchup do you want to see the most? Which matchup do you want to see the least? So, all right, we'll go with the people who don't have anyone in the fight first. Jamie, what do you think? Most and least?
I mean, can we just let Montana State and South Dakota play in Frisco? Because I'm sick and tired of the other 2.
You can't flip the board, Jamie.
Well, then Montana State, South Dakota State, I think that'll give you the best game.
Okay, cool. Kyler, what do you think? Most or least? What do you want to see?
Yeah, I want to see the Yotes versus the Bunnies, just because, I think I said this on the group there too. It's like, when they played NDSU, it was this rivalry, but it was respected and, it wasn't heated. I want to see the Bunnies in there with maybe a team they don't respect, right? Little brother going in there, and then I think that's a more hostile rivalry in the grand scheme of, we can't lose to these freaking bums. And then, the Yotes are like, we want everything they have. Screw those guys up there in Brookings. They suck. I want to see some, feistiness. So yeah, that's what I'm going for. The other one I don't want to see, anything that has to do with Montana State or North Dakota State. Ugh. So yeah, hope they jump off a plane.
I don't want to see North Dakota State USD because I think USD would bring less fans and it doesn't excite me as much. I don't know. And if NDSU were to lose to Brent Vegan, I'd be very happy for him as a coach and for what he's built. But honestly, if NDSU loses, absolutely give me the South Dakota versus South Dakota State matchup. That will be so fun to mess with those fan bases. They will be so nervous. It'll just be a blast. It'll be a blast. Sam, any take on this one?
Yeah, I think most intriguing would be Montana State playing South Dakota State, just their offense versus their defense. Least would probably be North Dakota State USD, just because it is a regular season rematch. South Dakota State, South Dakota would be more intriguing to me. Montana State, North Dakota State would be more intriguing too, just because they like the Brent Vegan versus his favorite thing, back in Frisco. Can you get over the hump? So that would still be decently intriguing. North Dakota State versus USD to me would, I don't know, it'd be new a little bit with USD getting there, but it wouldn't not be intriguing. It would just be the least intriguing out of the possibilities.
Very cool. Does the Dome sell out and have an NDSU and have the NDSU and SDSU fans just get plain bored of the FCS football? It's looking like D2 all over again, says Brian Thompson, the Taco King. You already heard my answer, Brian. I tried to get tickets earlier, and they are flying. That sucker is going to sell out. I'll be shocked if it doesn't. It's probably sold out right now, an hour and a half after it went on sale here on Sunday. So, odds of an all South Dakota final, says Dustin. Odds are not good because you would have to look at a Youngstown player catching a helmet catch on a Cheney red field and a James Madison Dukes stopping North Dakota State to go back to 2 road teams winning on the road in the semifinals to go down to Frisco. And that is the situation both South Dakota teams sit in. They both have to win on the road. And prior to that, I don't even know what year it would have happened. So odds are not great. How do you guys feel about the national championship game moving to Nashville? What do you think, Jamie? What do you think about Nashville, huh?
I've never been to Nashville, so I'm kind of intrigued by it. I think it'd be cool. It'd be fun. My wife's going to be pissed off because she's never been either. So maybe I've got to take her during the year so that she's been there and I'm not just going there for the first time between us by myself.
There you go. By the way, this question's in by Jeremiah Rash, who loves the move. Downtown Nashville's a great time, and he finally gets to meet you awesome guys because he says he's only a 3-hour drive away. Dude, Jeremiah, let's go. Southern Illinois super fan. Sam, you like the Nashville move?
Yeah, I do. I'm excited for it. Just been in Frisco basically every year since 2012, so something different will be exciting. And I think it'll be cool too that both fan bases will all be kind of in the general area of each other. Obviously, with Broadway there in Nashville, compared to Frisco, everything is just so spread out. So I just like the idea of all the fans kind of being in one general area compared to in Frisco, where I mean there's like 3 different suburbs that people are spread out about, whether it's Plano or some in Frisco. The bar, I don't even remember the bar that South Dakota State fans have taken over.
Oh, the local, yeah,
the local, but that's not even in Plano or Frisco, I don't think.
No.
So it's just Frisco does a great job. That general area does a great job, but it's just so spread out. Whereas in Nashville, I think everyone would be more confined to a general area.
Cool. Kyler, I know you want the tropics, you want the warmth, but this excite you at all?
I mean, I would prefer tropical and warm, but at the end of the day, yeah, give me Nashville over Frisco. I think Frisco does a really good job. They care. They invest. I mean, I think the stadium's actually fantastic. It creates a great atmosphere. But yeah, I don't want to go to Dallas every single year. I mean, I already live in Texas. And there's nothing that wows me about like Frisco outside if they do a really good job for the game. Yeah, Nashville's fun. Nashville's a good time. Bring me to Nashville.
Should be good. Yeah, right by Vanderbilt, one of my favorite universities, located in Tennessee. After the semifinal games, is it okay?
It's a joke.
Is it okay to play Christmas music, says Jim Poppin. These guys can counter me on the next question for this. Jim, you can play Christmas music all year round, especially November 1st. Let it rip.
Like
let it
hell.
roar. You can play it all the time, baby.
No, you can't play Christmas music until Santa comes down the damn street on the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. Then that's when you can turn it on.
Oh, come on. Look at Kyler.
The
Kyler
tradition
is
as stated by my grandfather.
Okay. Well, here you go. Speaking of traditions, it's the last question of the quick hits. What is your favorite Christmas decoration that you have in your house? Mine is the Hams Gruber Advent Calendar, where he falls each day until Christmas. That's from the Rev. So Christmas tradition thing in your home currently. What do you have, Kyler, besides those beautiful, beautiful houses behind you?
Oh man, my wife has tons, but mine is something that I still rock in February, March, June, July, August, and it is this shirt. I don't care. I got it at Walmart for $6 like 10 years ago, and it'll be July, and I'm wearing it out at the grocery store. My wife hates me. She yells at me every time I'm trying to take a step outside. She goes, "It's not Christmas," and I go, "I don't care." On Halloween, someone went, "That's a cool shirt." Some kid did. So she's got all the fancy stuff. She has a tree of crystals. All I got's my $6 Walmart shirt, and I love it.
That Walmart shirt throws back. That's Rudolph right there. Little kid, all that elf. He just wants to be a dentist. What a great movie. Great movie. Shout out to Chad. Mine is the houses. Easily. I love setting up those houses. I played on with little kids. I've got them up in our home. Easily that. Jamie, what are you rocking for something in the home for Christmas?
I don't know that there's anything like specific that stands out. We just have a lot of cool ornaments that we collect among our travels. So that collection of that, anywhere we go, we grab an ornament. So something like that just kind of allows us, kind of like you, Matt, with you and Allison, you could watch your journey. We can kind of watch, kind of look through where we've been over the years. So something that would be kind of one of my favorite things.
I love that. Mr. Herder, final answer. Christmas tradition. What's the thing you own that's the best?
Yeah, I think it was either last year or 2 years ago. We got, it was pretty popular on social media, which I didn't know, but I guess it was. It was the Home Depot, like plastic life-size golden retriever that lights up, and you put it like on your like your front porch, and then it's wearing a like a Santa hat. Like I guess it was very, very popular. So my girlfriend, now fiance, like we had to go to like 3 or 4 different Home Depots to find it because they were all sold out. So I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago that we got it, but that one takes the cake, I think.
That's awesome. And it comes with a cool story. Congratulations on the engagement, by the way. Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the FCS Fans Nation podcast for our semifinal preview. We hope you enjoy the games, and we hope you enjoy the festivities. And make sure you join us for the mega live episode. That is the day after, December 22nd. that evening, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on Twitter. So make sure you subscribe. It's going to be a fun time. You'll have the Rev, you'll have Jackrabbit Illustrated guys, we'll have special guests, you'll have us. Should be a good time. And you can always join FCS Gold to listen to this podcast ad-free, compete in our competitions, the Bracket Challenge, Pick'em Challenges. It's only 99 cents a month. Things to come. Sam, where can the fans, I think everybody in the FCS knows where to find you, but just in case somebody is new to this whole thing, where do they find Sam Herder? Where do they find your platforms? Where's it at?
Website herosports.com, Twitter at Sam Herder FCS, and then podcast is called FCS Football Central.
Awesome. Very cool. You will see Sam Herder's Twitter thing on the description of YouTube below, and you'll be able to follow him immediately by clicking that link. All right, gentlemen, we come to the end. Sam, we thank you so much for taking the time on a Sunday evening, busy weekends. We know you are easily the hardest working man in FCS football, so to take time for us means the world. Do you have any final thoughts before a semifinal weekend kicks?
No, I was looking for a tweet I had 3 years ago, 2021, when South Dakota State was going to Montana State and James Madison was going to North Dakota State. And the tweet basically said, for how many warts the FCS has and the FCS playoff bracket has, the semifinals this weekend are going to be peak FCS because you have 4 great programs, 2 awesome home environments. It's what we love about the FCS. And now we kind of have the same thing with USD going to Montana State, South Dakota State going to the Fargo Dome, which attendance has been an issue, but like we talked about, it's going to be packed in the Fargo Dome this weekend. And so a lot of complaints we can have about the FCS, but I think this weekend is the absolute showcase of the subdivision.
I don't remember those
FCS.
I don't remember those semifinals. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
I know Kyler got a tattoo after we donated a lot of money, but I don't remember any football games.
It seems like a different lifetime. Like, oh, James Madison was in the FCS. That was that was a thing. That was a thing for a little bit.
You know what? I'll give all that together here, Sam. 2 giant games of mammoth programs, losses and wins we want to and don't want to remember, and Kyler getting a tattoo. That's all you need around here. Enjoy the games, ladies and gentlemen. Boom. Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe on YouTube. To listen ad-free and enjoy many other perks, join FCS Gold for only 99 cents a month by using the link in the description below. Make sure to follow FCS Fans Nation on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football.
It's easy when you get to focus on a very small amount of teams rather than 128.
Good luck.
It's just, yeah.